Thanks, Rajendra Singh, Senior Business Leader from Colpole, to share his thoughts with us in terms of how the companies leveraging technology to make a difference in the higher education sector. This brings us to the point where we start the next panel discussion, a very important panel discussion of the day on designing digital infrastructure and outlining roadmap for new education model. And for that, we have again eminent speakers with us for this panel discussion. May I invite Professor Rajat Poona. Okay, sir has to leave. Let me invite Mr. Rajneesh, the consulting editor of APAC News Network, to come on stage. He'll be playing the role of moderator for this session. Professor Dr. Amit Banerjee, Pro-Chancellor, Siksha O Anusandhan, Dean to the University of Bhubaneswar, on stage, please. A huge round of applause for him. Mr. Vishal Khurma, Chief Executive Officer, Woxen University, on stage, please. A round of applause for him. Professor Dr. Manoj Kumar Pandey, Joint Head of Amity School of Engineering and Technology. If you can join us on stage, please. Dr. Nitin Rane, Vice Chancellor, Avantika University. Mr. Ashish Thakur, Chairman and Executive Director, Global Private Limited, from the beautiful country of Nepal. A huge round of applause for him. And Mr. Amol Maheshwari, Chief Distribution Officer of Early Salary, on stage, please. With this, I request Mr. Rajneesh Dey to take over the session.
Thanks, Shobik. Since we are running a little behind schedule, I will request all the panelists to keep your answers precise and brief, so that we can cover the ambit can be more in a shorter span of time. So, as the topic, as we know, the topic is on designing digital infrastructure and outlining roadmap for the new education model. So what the format I will do is, I will come to each of the panelists and very briefly first ask each of you, in terms of digital infrastructure in your institution, what are the measures that you have adopted? Very briefly, for 2 to 3 minutes each, digital infrastructure measures that you have adopted. So I will like to start with Professor Banerjee. The point, the salient infrastructure, digital infrastructure that are in place, and how does it impact both the faculty and the students in your institution?
Sure. Thank you very much. As a matter of fact, over the last couple of years, two very important things happened in the academic ecosystem of this country. One was I think 3 to 4 years back, we had the induction of the fourth industrial revolution, which came into being with all its components, which you are all aware of. And the other thing that happened is the introduction of the national education policy. And juxtaposed between the two came in the episode of COVID, which took away almost 2 years of very precious academic period. But then, as it was pointed out short while ago by one of the preceding speakers, it also brought in an acceleration in the process of bringing digitalization into academic process. Now, the Siksha Anusandhan University at Bhubaneswar, we have the peculiarity of having 8 or 9 different streams to which we have got colleges. We have got an engineering college with all the components of an engineering college that are required for basic engineering, started in 1996. We have got a medical college which has got undergraduate program, we have got a postgraduate program, and we have got post-doctoral program, that is DM and MCH, in all the disciplines available under the National Medical Commission, almost all the disciplines. We have got a dental institute, we have got Institute of Nursing, we have got Institute of Pharmacy, We have got a law college, we have got an agriculture institute, we have got a veterinary college, we have got hotel management, and we have got a very big component in which we have got management, including hospital administration. So as you can see that the concept of NAP, of which one very important factor is interdisciplinary education. It works very well in our university system. So what we have done is, we have tried to bring some kind of an amalgamation. Our institutions are spread over 4 or 5 different campuses, and they are within a distance of 3 to 4 kilometers from each other. So what we have done is that we have tried to bring in the concept of digitization in the best possible way by bringing some kind of a amalgamation in the understanding of interdisciplinary. For example, if I talk of health sciences is a very important component of our university system. So supposing we talk of designing of a heart valve. Now designing of a heart valve comprises, the concept of where a heart valve is required, then the understanding the physiology of how the blood flow is going to take place through a designed heart valve, then the components, which components are going to be compatible with the blood, compatible with the body tissues, and then it comes to, how is the valve going to function mechanically, and lastly, how is the whole thing going to be set into a prototype. So earlier on, these things used to require kind of physical assimilation of people together from different branches, getting people putting their heads together. So what we have done is, we have created a situation in which if a designing process is carried out in the medical college, it is almost online, they interact as far as the material is concerned with the concerned section of the engineering college. Then as far as the physiology of the thing or the pharmacology of the thing, whether it is component with the blood or blood related substances, that is done by the School of Pharmacy. So the entire thing has been done with a nearly seamless, connectivity. I would not say completely seamless because we are still on the job of doing it, but this is what we have conceptualized. Another such important aspect is the, dental material. Dentistry is a very, very important component of material as far as healthcare is concerned. So people who have concepts of designing dentures or, implants and other things, they are in touch digitally through our engineering sector and the concerned people who deal with materials, so on and so forth. So, this is the way we have kind of tried to bring a near seamless connectivity between the different colleges. So, I think in brief, that is how I would like to introduce how we are going about it.
Thanks. So it's more of the interdisciplinary connection. At this moment, I would like to introduce Professor Niharika Vora. She is the Vice Chancellor of Delhi School and Skill and Entrepreneurship University. And she has an urgent meeting. May I request her to speak on digital infrastructure that particularly you have deployed to your institution, and what are the, according to the new education roadmap, how the technology fits in there.
So thank you for the question. I think we are a very new university. We are about a year old. So at this point of time, we are still and we are a year old, but we are also, as a university, very, very old, because the oldest polytechnic that got merged with us in Delhi was possibly set up in 1964. And as I'm sure many of you sitting here would recognize that when you start at a certain time, you can bring in the best of the technology to do it. But when you are putting together the the camel age and the current age together, the challenges are much higher. So one of the things we have been trying to do is to say that at least the first batch, the batch that we've admitted, will completely be paperless. So in the sense that it will be on a ERP, there is an LMS, and we were, of course, we started classes when the COVID was at peak. So we also had the challenge of doing most of it online, starting it online, which I'm sure everybody had. And I think the biggest challenge at that point of time was labs, because if you're a skill and entrepreneurship university, how do you ensure that students actually do something, not just learn the lesson, which is what typically a digital can, help you do. So therefore, I think one of the exercises that we undertook was we started scouring all the various digital labs that have been put in place. So Professor Ranjan Bose, who is the director of IIIT Delhi, also the chair of the digital lab project of the country, helped us to identify for every subject a particular virtual lab that the students could use. And it was interesting because, when we told our faculty that please ask the students to use the virtual lab and use it yourself, the first thing was, how can you teach them, how can I get them to do titration without teaching them something? The other thing. And I'm like, this is virtual. It's a simulation. How does it matter if they put the wrong value? What happens if they do it? At least they'll learn and they'll play.
But here, if I may interrupt, ultimately the funda behind having labs is experiential learning. And experiential learning, especially titration is one good example you had given. Similar others. So, how can a virtual lab at the end of the day really help in the experiential learning, which is possible when you are doing the thing real time in person?
Okay, so my answer to that is, let's look at the shipping industry. So there is one way of learning shipping, which is, learning all of that. But for sure that in the shipping industry now, more and more training is on the simulator, right? The simulator never replaces going on the sea or on the real ship. But in the beginning, a lot of what you possibly learned just by being on the sea and ship actually can be learned on the simulator. You can learn how the approximation is, how. So I don't think that the answer is either or. The answer is and it only shortens the time that you will spend in learning. And if in the, for example, when we were in the situation we were in, rather than just teaching theory, just because you could not do something hands-on, at least the virtual was a good. Also, my belief is that, when the pandemic, if at the end of the pandemic we simply go back to the pre-pandemic days and say this is how we taught, and in between for 2 years we had an interlude, and now we go back to teaching exactly the way we taught, then I think we haven't learned from history. I think there's been a lot of lessons for all of us to learn, and it's only important that to make education more meaningful and possibly accessible to more, we actually put all of these together.
Thanks.
So that's what I would say.
So two key things that you mentioned. One was the challenge of having legacy and when modernizing, and how do you balance between the two? And then it's not a question of either or, but both would be coexisting, as you said, as a learning from during the pandemic. I would also like to introduce now Dr. Nitin Rane, Vice Chancellor of Avantika University. He also joined in between, and I'll put the question to him, same question. Very briefly, if you can mention the digital infrastructure that are put in place in Avantika, and how is both the students and faculty, the two parts of the education ecosystem, how is it affecting them?
Thank you. Let me introduce. Ours is the university established in the year 2017. Basically, it's a MIT Pune group who established a university in Ujjain, Madhya Pradesh. Right from beginning of the university, we came up with good practices, basically on project-based learning. For achieving the project-based learning, from day one itself, we have strengthened our digital infrastructure at the university. Basically, we have classified the digital infrastructure of the university in the categories like technical tools, student engagement, workplace tools, campus services, academic softwares, and ICT essentials. If we talks about the technical tools, all that learning management and learning tools will comes into it. Then for student engagement, we are having the student information system and all those softwares and digitalization related to the career
Okay.
services and placements. If we talks about the workplace tools, the softwares or the digitalization tools related to the human resource management, payroll management, all those we taken care of. And campus services like the ICT services. So we have more emphasis on the digitalization of the campus of the university, and we really proudly said like ours is a campus, like paperless campus or something like that. Total things are digitalized. Thank you.
Thank you. So next I'll come to Professor Manoj Kumar Pandey. My question again in terms of the salient digital implementations that you have done, and how does it involve or impact the overall education ecosystem in Amity?
Thank you. Thank you. So, I'm Dr. Manoj Kumar Pandey. I'm Director of MIT School of Engineering and Technology, MIT University, Noida. And MIT Group of Education have 12 universities now across the country, and we have 17 campuses outside India. And we had campus in New York, and which we have recently purchased of 125-acre Long Island. And there we are making research and innovation hub separately for across the world. We are hiring the people over there. Having said that, we are offering various courses, various programs of the interdisciplinary nature as well. We are offering in engineering, technology, management, and paramedical. We are having stem cell study. We are having, and we have just received. We are conferred an award for patent and commercialization from Honorable Minister of Commerce and Ministry, and for that patents and commercialization. And because we always have the proactive approach in our nature in university, and our Honorable Chancellor, Dr. Atul K. Chauhan, always he motivate about, and he has a proactive approach of establishing all these technologies. And I can proudly say that I can remember that pandemic has struck the world, and especially in India, it has 20th we have done lockdown. And from 18th of March, we had converted complete study in digital platform. And we had already done that. MS Team was the first tool which we have utilized for our classes, our sessions, our sessionals, our maybe other teaching tools. So there we had transformed. So we had, because we had already the digital infrastructure in place, previously in place. Now after that, we just faced the challenge of how to handle the lab class, as my previous co-speaker has also had raised that concern. And we had immediately contacted the MHRD and the team who all now the Ministry of Education, those who were developing the virtual labs. So we became the member of the virtual lab development committee, and immediately some of the virtual labs has came to us, through which we can give the glimpse of the laboratories, especially where it is applicable. So that virtual lab we have taken up, and we started developing our own virtual labs. So now we have developed around 100 virtual labs, our own, in-house. So these virtual labs we are right now conferring our studies. After knowing the need of the hour, our statutory bodies, AICT and UGC, has also given the mandate of including the online portion in our curriculum as well. So that, how to continue it, because now we have to make it part of our life. And this is a positive sign, part of the COVID-19, which has taught us how we can change the pedagogy and how we can utilize all the technology for the welfare and imparting education to the students. So now still we have included 20 to 30% digital education, digitally that we are offering. So, and many more things initiatives are in place. Thank you very much.
Thanks. So, primarily two important things you mentioned, that one, even once the pandemic and the lockdown started, you were sort of prepared digitally before that, and the next important thing was the 100 virtual labs that had come up in the last couple of years. So next I'll come to you, Vishal Kurma of Watson University, and again the point, if you can highlight the digital infrastructure that you have deployed, and how are they impacting both the students and faculty?
Thank you. Watson University at Hyderabad is a very, very progressive university, very young university. Just about 2 years back, we became a state private university approved by Government of Telangana. Under that, we have 5 schools as of now, and as we were right in the middle of the COVID when we became the university, and I'm so happy to share with you that when the lockdown started, it took us about flat 4 days to start off with the online classes for our students, and that speaks about the kind of progressiveness and the forward-looking attitude which we had, the kind of over-indexing we had done towards the digital infrastructure we had built for our students' learning. So those all initiatives were pretty much well in place right from the entire, because what we have done is we have made sure that the digital infrastructure and digitalization is touching into the every life cycle of the student journey when they start their learning journey with us, right from the time when they fill the application. So for us, it is not only about one part of it. It is digitalization at every particular sphere, which is touching the lives of the students right from the starting. So which means that the entire process of admission is digitalized completely, no papers required. Similarly, moving on to the onboarding, again, no papers required. They get into the classrooms, the smart classrooms, smart boards and everything is available to them. They get into the library for seeking resources for their learning. You have digital resources as well as other physical resources available for their learning. So there is a pretty much very good pool of learning resources available in our learning center, the library which we have, which is one of the finest and state-of-the-art in the country. Apart from that, we have various labs which are fully digitally equipped. We have labs on artificial intelligence, on machine learning, on some of the various emerging technology-led programs which we offer in the UG and PG space. So all of those laboratories, if you see, they are all digitally equipped. There are ways and means in which we try to give that experiential learning for our students, because we firmly believe that the curriculum which we design should be in such a way that we focus 50% on the theory part, and the balance 50% should always remain towards the experiential hands-on learning, and in which technology plays a very, very vital role. So some of the spheres which are there in the BTech space particularly, for example, you need that hands-on learning which is through the robotics lab, the AI lab, behavioral lab, and all these kind of labs which we have done are towards building that world-class infrastructure for the learning of our students. This all stems out from the entire vision of the Watson University towards creating a place of learning for the students where they don't have to look for any other foreign universities abroad to seek higher education. And towards that, what we are also doing is our very strong focus and impetus is towards internationalization, where we are basically looking at some of the best practices which are coming from those top tier universities. Right now, I'm very pleased to share with all of you we have about close to 90 plus global partner universities tied up with Watson University from all across 40 plus countries across the globe. So that is no mean feat of achievement, given that we are a very young university, which is just about 2-year-old, and we have been able to do that. And constantly the idea is to bring on those kind of learning resources which are available globally for the students here, not only on the physical front, but also on the digital front.
Sure. So primarily the focus is on replicating some of the global best practices here. So now, before coming to Ashish, now you have heard from all the academicians. So my question is, as a solution provider, you have heard how deployment and digital deployment has been done in these universities. So how, as a technology solution provider, you can help? What is the role that you can play here?
Thank you for the question. And first of all, I would like to comment on the works that the Indian universities have been doing is really commendable in terms of the setup of new universities with newness, not just in the infrastructure, but also in ideology, is something which we need to learn. In terms of solution providing, I'll just speak a bit of that, and I'll just also, in order to put forward some Nepal's perspective on this, I would speak on that. As you see, Global After School is an envisioned activity of Global, as we were into the skill development field since last 8 years in Nepal as Global, where we were working with different educational institutions in providing skill development efforts and skill development solutions, including extracurricular activities for their students in the schools, which by the time when we came towards 2017 was more or less, we found that until and unless we embed technology to that, it is not going to be sustainable in terms of reaching out to more and more people and providing services to much needed categories of students that is in their teenage and that is also in their college education, which we talk about employability skills. Even in earlier session of inaugural, there was Dr. Manish, if I am not wrong, who was speaking about the lack of employability skills which is there, which is seen even if you see the UNICEF's report 3 years back. It says that more than half of the students would be coming out of the schools without the skills needed for future jobs by 2030, and which is very right. If you go and see people today will not get that. So that particular thing was something that initiated us into getting into Global After School, which is an EdTech company, the first one in terms of skill development EdTech in Nepal, which was started in 2017, but somehow we also call it COVID burn. Though we initiated in 2017, it got somewhere only in 2020, March, and that is how we also call it first one. And with that, we have been reaching out to currently about 12,000 students are learning from different institutions, academic institutions in Nepal through our portal of EdTech. And not only that, but also we provide corporate solutions for employability skills, where we are providing trainings for corporates, employees in terms of doing that. And now coming back to my thought processes on the academic newness and ideological newness that the Indian education system is bringing. So I also serve as the advisor to the Chief Minister of Bagmati province, which is the capital province of Nepal, for education, skills, and youths, and entrepreneurship. And we, for the very first time in Nepal, have come up with the bill which has been passed very recently, that now the private universities can be opened in Nepal. Till date, we only had public universities, and that too with a traditional approach of learning at a lot of longer time. And that has opened up a very good process of initiating and developing the learning transformation for a larger time that has been required. And there I see a lot of potentiality in terms of collaboration with Indian education system and Indian universities. And just to also let you know, and also promoting my country's investment here, that education has 100% FDI allowance in Nepal, where 100% from outside can be brought in Nepal and be invested. And now we also have the provision of opening up new universities with new ideas in Nepal at Bagmati province. You're more than welcome. I invite all the dignitaries and the people who are from university sector to also come up and be there in Nepal. Thank you so much.
Okay, thanks. So, just in the inaugural session, one of the dignitaries talked about that knowledge should know no bounds. So this, and we are also talking about some of the global best practices. So one, we can replicate some of the global best practices, and collaboration definitely across geographies is very much possible. Amol, I'll come to you now. Again, the same question. You've heard all the academicians talking about their digital deployment. So how, as a technology solution provider, you can help?
Thanks for having me in the panel discussion. And I think the fellow panelists have really discussed about commendable work that they've done. And this commendable work, in fact, has been during a era of crisis, which has been the COVID crisis. How from a physical educational system we've gone to a digital one, and now we're talking about both interchanging a physical and digital distribution. Anything that you talk about can only be successful if you democratize it, if there is a lot of mass adoption of it. And what we've seen is that unless and until you have finance, you have affordability being there, any of the best of infrastructure, any of the best of technologies, they may not be able to reach to masses. And what we've in fact seen that India today is the most adaptive country in the world. I mean, if you talk about digitization, no longer we are actually behind US, UK. You talk to various people, technology adoption in India has been very, very high. It's far ahead than various developed economies in the world. And that's where, a unique blend of education or edtech, I would just club it as edtech, and fintech has been happening. Without embedded finance into a proposition, the proposition would not be able to reach to masses. And again, we're talking about future of education. Here we are talking about panelists coming from very established universities. But when we're talking about education, you have education right up to K-12, which is people studying up to 12th standard. Then you have people preparing for educational big institution, which is competitive exams. Then you have universities that our fellow panelists are from. There is a huge market of upskilling, wherein you have various platforms during COVID reaching out to various people in corporates, wherein the skill sets of an employee, it may not be relevant, hence an employee needs to keep on upskilling. Everyone wants to really go for higher jobs, bigger jobs, better appraisals, and the way technology and the world outside is changing, every one of us needs to keep on imparting new skills. It could be about analytics, it could be about machine learning, it could be about distribution, various things. So hence these all four things are very important, and for all these four things you have different target markets, and affordability is something which is very important. Along with affordability comes another important aspect which today an Indian consumer is talking about, which is convenience. Today, most of you may have an iPhone, and this is the favorite example why I use, because in March 2022, 80% of the iPhones were sold on EMIs, which means that people who even would have had money to buy it, it's not so expensive. I think most of the people in this room can afford it, but still 80% of us would have wanted to buy an iPhone on EMIs. That is immediate gratification. You don't want to pay anything upfront, you want to pay in easy EMIs. And the way all the things, when you go to a mall, when you go everywhere, it's designed in a way that today everything is so easy to grab on easy EMIs. And that's where if you can pay for and consumer good on EMIs, why can't you pay for education EMIs? And just wanted to add a few points. Hence, a role of a fintech company becomes very important in terms of embedding its financial options, that how you can actually build affordability right into the K-12 list of institutions. A parent can easily afford education, pay a lower amount of fees because a upfront bullet of fees comes at a discount. So hence, you need to have an embedded finance in terms of school fees education. Then you have preparing for competitive exams. You can always grab a better coaching institution. You can grab a better way of getting prepared. So hence, embedded finance comes in. Upskilling is a huge market wherein as you earn, you can also learn. So which means that the way you get your salaries every month, you can actually pay for courses into easy EMIs. Now, most of the organizations today, they are not able to, have so many MDPs, which is management development programs. So hence, how can employees get an ecosystem where they can opt for the course that puts them onto a next job and do it?
Point taken. So basically, you are emphasizing the role that fintech can play in education, especially in democratizing education. Absolutely, we are running behind schedule. So I will finish and just come to each panelist for 30 seconds. Just highlight one important point in this new education roadmap that you feel will be most salient for your institution. Starting with you, Professor Banerjee, 30 seconds each.
The biggest challenge I see is bringing the digital revolution to the healthcare education sector, because when we talk of healthcare, artificial reality or virtual reality or advanced reality, mixed reality, none of them will work, because healthcare education amounts to, actually dealing with individuals who are real people. So this is a challenge which has to be met. Otherwise, even if we can transmit lectures from Harvard or Stanford or any of the big universities, the learning process on the clinical material will remain a big challenge.
Sure, healthcare education will be a challenge. Nitin, your 30 seconds starts now.
Comparing to traditional education system, I feel like in today's era, we need to think of emphasizing a more digitalization of the university. That is very important. But apart from that, if we talk about the teaching learning process, the continual assessment, which is very important, because earlier we used to have paper pencil examination, which is at the end of the course, something like that. But this is very important for bringing the change in academic system. And apart from that, the block pattern we used to follow at our university, which is very, very impressive in terms of knowledge gaining of the students. And lastly, I would say the project-based learning. These three are the crucial measures I'm suggesting.
Yes,
Thank you.
project-based. Manoj.
If you are asking about the challenges for the digital education, then of course digital education is very, very important, and it's very useful for every community, as said by my co-speakers as well. However, there are certain limitations and challenges is the student engagement, because when you are taking a class, big class of 60 students, 100 students, you never know what the students are doing behind the cameras. So that is student engagement, but yes, that can be removed with the implementation of blended type of learning or the flip type of learning, so that also can be resolved. Thank you.
Thank you. Vishal.
So, just to give a little bit of a recap on few things, various reports are there, multiple sources. Everyone talks about 50% of the students, they don't have the skills, they're not future ready. That's point number one. Big challenge. And the irony is, India has more than 25,000 institutions all across the country who are giving this education to all the students, who incidentally, when they turn up for employment, they are seen as not employable or not future ready. Now that's where the digitalization comes. That's where the critical piece of in-person as well as online delivery comes into the picture, because as rightly said by one of the co-panelists here, only online is not going to work, and only in-person also is no longer going to work.
Exactly.
And the key basis for that is that anything and everything which has to coexist today, in-person, assisted learning on the virtual also is something which is a need. And why it is required? Because today, if the more and more we move towards getting our curriculums future ready, you will not get the workforce and the students future ready. And that requires huge amount of experiential learning and hands-on learning, which can come through the labs and through the digital world, which can possibly get that kind of a learning curve and help improve the understanding to make them future ready.
Sure. Ashish, you have 30 seconds.
Holistically speaking, number one, there needs to be a very good and proficient academia and industry collaboration for developing all these things, which will complete all these issues at large. And secondly, focusing academics with particularly experiential skill-based learning, along with the sides of academic learning, not separately as a vocational education just, but together with academic learning would be needed. Thank you.
Thanks. Amol, you have the last word. You have 30
So,
seconds.
I think the game-changing things would be, how do you democratize education for tier 2, tier 3 cities, because those are the people living in those areas who may not have access to the best of the education. And how do you build affordability there? And how do you upfront tell that how easy today is to actually do a particular course? It could be a short-term, long-term, and how easy one can pay, for that. So those would be the two game-changing ideas for the future of education.
Thanks. Thanks to all the panelists, and I'll apologize for rushing through because we are running behind schedule. We will, before we break up, I think we will just, if you can come for a group photograph.